The following presentation is on Act 125, Seclusion and Restraint in Public Schools, that was passed in 2011. It defines seclusion and restraint, gives conditions for appropriate use of seclusion and restraint, discusses training for those using seclusion and restraint, and discusses notification and reporting requirements. A little background for why we have seclusion and restraint laws in Wisconsin. A disproportionate amount of students with disabilities were being restrained in our schools than those without disabilities. Also, extreme cases of students being secluded for long periods of time and in poor conditions, and students being injured and even dying from physical restraints were being reported. Under this law, all students, regular education and special education students, are covered in public schools and charter schools. Seclusion is defined as the involuntary confinement of a pupil apart from other pupils in a room or area from which the pupil is physically prevented from leaving. Important concepts to remember are: it doesn't matter what you call the room, timeout room, seclusion, recovery, etc. Nor does it have to be a separate room or in a room. If you prevent a student from leaving an area, whether it is in a room, hallway, or leaving the school, it is seclusion. Conditions for acceptable use of seclusion are: behavior is a clear, present, and imminent danger to self or others, and is the least restrictive intervention, meaning in most cases, de-escalation or other preventative strategies have already been tried. Staff must maintain constant supervision, must either be present in the room with student or see the student at all times through the window. The room or area is free of things that may injure the student. Allow bathroom visits, water, regularly scheduled medications and meals. Length of seclusion is only as long as necessary to keep the student safe. Absolutely no locks of any kind on the door. Staff may hold the door closed. Physical restraint is a restriction that immobilizes or reduces the ability of a pupil to freely move his or her torso, arms, legs, or head. Picking up and physically moving a student against his or her will, or dragging a student, would also be physical restraint. A two-person CPI transport with student walking willingly or reluctantly is not a restraint. When student stops participating, staff should stop, or else it is a restraint. Conditions for acceptable use of restraint. Behavior presents a clear, present, and imminent risk to self or others, and is the least restrictive intervention. This is the same definition as for seclusion. Make sure restraint doesn't cause or exacerbate a medical condition. Recommend consulting the school nurse. Use reasonable force and duration proportionate to the level of risk behavior necessary to resolve the incident. Use techniques that properly protect the student's head, no chest compressions or pressure on the abdomen diaphragm area, and do not use techniques that restrict breathing. At DC Everest, we use CPI-approved techniques only. No floor techniques, standing or sitting positions are only used. Mechanical restraints, weighted blankets, vests, seatbelts, adaptive strollers, and wheelchairs, etc. can be used for sensory or physical supports. These supports should be under supervision or direction of appropriate school staff, such as the school nurse, occupational or physical therapists, and used for their design purposes, and must be written into the IEP. The IEP determines what will be used. For example, Riften chairs, adaptive bikes, wheelchairs can be utilized to support or transport students if physical issues are present, but if you strap a student into one of these devices due to behavior, then it is not being used for the design purpose and is considered a restraint. The law indicates at least one staff member in each school receives training. At DC Everest, we use CPI for our restraint training, and most restraints are two-person restraints. At DC Everest, all special education staff, teachers and associates, and related service providers are trained. In addition, administrators, school psychologists, school counselors, school social workers, and others determined by the principal are CPI trained. Those trained are certified for 18 months and take refresher courses before their license expires. If CPI certification lapses, then they retake initial CPI certification. The district maintains records of who was trained, when they were trained, and when the refresher is due by. The special education secretary keeps that information. In the event of unforeseen emergency, a non-certified person may provide a restraint for the safety of the child and other students. A couple things to remember. A student's ability to communicate should not be restricted during a seclusion or restraint. Seclusion and restraint should only be used to diffuse a dangerous situation, protect the student and others from serious bodily injury, and reestablish a safe learning environment. Seclusion and restraint should never be used for disciplinary reasons. Verbal, non-compliant behavior and refusal to go somewhere usually would not meet requirements for seclusion or restraint, nor would minor physical behavior such as throwing pencils, ripping up paper, etc. For seclusion, the name of the room is less important than how it is used. Quiet room, seclusion, recovery, timeout area, etc. For each incident of seclusion or restraint, an incident report must be completed. The principal or designee must complete or sign the incident report. Typically, the certified teacher, regular ed or special ed teacher that was present will complete the report. Associates that are present may help provide information to the teacher or staff member. The written incident report must be made available to the parents within 3 business days, but must be written within 2 business days of the incident. Parents must be informed of the incident and the availability of the report within 1 business day. It is recommended to notify parents by phone call on the same day of the incident and to write up the incident on the same day whenever possible, although this is not required. Staff are required to notify parents every time seclusion or restraints occur. Multiple seclusion and restraints may be recorded on the same report and counted as one if it is considered the same incident, i.e. the student never fully recovers and multiple seclusion or restraints are used in a short period of time. If multiple incidents occur in the same day but are separate incidents, then the separate reports must be completed, although you may notify the parent in one contact. Each school must report seclusion or restraint data to the school board annually by September 1st. At DC Everest, the school psychologist and pupil services director collects this data. Report includes the number of incidents of seclusion and restraint for that academic year, the total number of students involved in seclusion and restraints, and the number of students with disabilities involved in seclusion and restraints. Here is a copy of the form the DC Everest School District uses anytime a seclusion and restraint occurs. Please submit a copy to your building principal and school psychologist. For students with disabilities, seclusion or restraint should be written into the IEP when the IEP team can reasonably anticipate that a student may need a seclusion or restraint. In these cases, the IEP must also address appropriate positive interventions and supports that will support the student's behavior and must be based on a functional behavioral assessment. If the seclusion and restraint is not in the IEP and a seclusion or restraint is used, then the IEP team must reconvene the IEP and address positive behavioral supports, conduct an FBA, and add in seclusion or restraint into the IEP. In conclusion, if you have any questions regarding seclusion and restraint, please contact your building principal, school psychologist, and/or pupil services director. If you feel you need CPI training, also contact your building principal. CPI trainings are provided throughout the year within district and is on the PD site, but must have school principal approval.